So, you're looking to upgrade your Captain the Grafrod Commander deck, but you're not quite sure where to start? Well, I'm here to help. My name is Capital G, and welcome to the first 10. Captain the Grafrod, lead singer of the Mind Flayrrrs deck. Why Flayrrrs? Because he's a pirate. He's also a horror, but he's a pirate. Black, blue, and 3 for a 3/6. Horrors you control have menace. Captain the Grafrod included in this. Whenever a horror you control deals combat damage to a player, that player mills that many cards. And at the beginning of your end step, choose target artifact or creature card in an opponent's graveyard that was put there from their library this turn. Put it onto the battlefield under your control. So we are milling opponents, but not for the not necessarily for the purpose of milling them to win, but milling them to take their stuff. And we're going to win with their stuff, which is a lot of fun for us, not necessarily for our opposition. But that's fine. At least we're doing it with a really, really cool octopus squid pirate thingy. So let's see how we're going to go about it. I'm actually going to start with the sorceries, because this is a better spell slinger style of deck than it is, say, a creatures or permanents deck. So we're going to start with some instants and sorceries, including Spell Twine. Because we're milling cards randomly, we could mill some instants or sorceries. So let's cast instants and sorceries, shall we? Mind Funeral. Target opponent reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal 4 lands. That player puts all cards revealed this way into their graveyard. So yes, we're guaranteed to hit 4 of our opponent's lands, but all the good stuff in between those lands, we'll have our pick of the litter. And Bond of Insight, I thought it was a pretty cool card from War of the Spark that we don't usually see play in our format, but I think it's good here. For blue and 3, each player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard. Return up to 2 instants or sorceries from our graveyard to our hand, exile Bond of Insight. I think this is a fantastic Spellslinger card, especially when this also means that we get to take our opponent's stuff. We do want to protect our commander, though. Our commander will be a target every time it comes out because nobody wants us to take their stuff. They don't want us to have any fun, so we're going to slip out the back and phase out. Single blue mana, it's a good example of a defensive piece to help us keep our commander on the battlefield. A few enchantments that'll help us out. We're going to go with the Court of Cunning. Blue, blue, and 1, and when this enters the battlefield, we become the monarch. Pretty sweet. At the beginning of our upkeep, any number of target players each mill 2 cards. If we are the monarch, those players mill 10 cards instead. So even if we're only milling 2 cards per opponent, like all of our opponents mill 2, well, that's already 6 cards that we could potentially take with our commander. That number becomes 30 if we somehow start our turn as the monarch. I don't expect to keep the monarchy, but we don't have to keep it in order to have this effective. And even better is the fact that we get to choose who we affect with this. So if somebody's running a Muldrotha deck, for example, we're not just feeding them. We can choose not to put cards to their graveyard and not give them any fuel. Something that's a little less optional but quite flexible, King Narfi's Betrayal. Black, blue, and 1, it's a saga. Each player mills 4 cards, then we may exile a creature or planeswalker from each graveyard. It doesn't matter if it was amongst the milled cards or not. Chapters 2 and 3 are until end of turn. We can cast cards from amongst those exiled with King Narfi's Betrayal. I like that. Any creatures that we can't get right away, we'll just exile them and cast them later. And Psychic Corrosion. Whenever we draw a card, each opponent puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. Again, by milling all of our opponents, it gives us a better selection for our commander at the end of the turn. Couple of creatures. Our commander does like horrors, so here is one very powerful horror in Changeling Outcast. 1 mana, 1/1. It's every creature type, not just horror, and it cannot block and cannot be blocked. So we can just kind of plink in and get access to another card from one of our opponents. Something a little more business end is the Dusk Wrangler coming from New Capenna. Black, black, and 5 for this 5/4. As an additional cost to cast the spell, we have to sacrifice a creature, discard a card, or pay 4 life, so we have our choice of the 3. But once this enters the battlefield, each of our opponents sacrifices a creature, discards a card, and loses 4 life. So 5-4 is a pretty good business end number, but the fact that it also takes away so many resources from our opponents when it comes to the battlefield is what makes this a pretty sweet ad. And the last card we're going to highlight, and it's an odd pick, is Stone Speaker Crystal. I highlighted this as an example of a card that can exile any number of target players' graveyard. So if somebody is casting a big reanimation spell and we just cannot allow it, we can always use the Stone Speaker Crystal to exile the graveyards in question. It's also a Urbana Rockets, costs 4 mana, taps for 2, generic. This is not the only example of a card that can exile a graveyard at will, but I hadn't featured any other new cards from Baldur's Gate, so that's why I picked this one specifically. But there are so many great examples of graveyard exile, so be sure to keep an eye out for those, because we're going to need a couple of these handy just in case. And with that in mind, that is my suggestions for upgrading Captain Nagathrod. Hope you all enjoyed that, and well, the only deck after this is the Dragon deck. We get to play with dragons in the next episode. So with that in mind, I will see you then. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.